Welcome to Claw Combos. Today we have a super exciting guest, Warren Zeiser, the founder of We Rise Consulting and executive coach and business consultant. Welcome to the show, Warren.
How you doing, ladies?
Good.
Great. Do you happen to have a drink in hand?
I do, and it was a little bit of an emergency because I had this all planned, but I had to call an audible at the last minute and change location. So I had a scotch ready, and I instead had to come to my office. But thankfully, we have some Hendrix gin.
Oh,
So good.
Good. Hey guys, this is Sheila and Maya Dunn, and you're listening to Claw Combos. Let's get it done, bitches. Okay, so we wanted to start off talking about kind of your background with Horizon Gourmet Foods and doing some research on you before recording this. We saw you joined Horizon at the age of 22 or 23. Could you tell us a bit about how you got started there and what kind of led you to that company?
Yeah, actually, I was 19. I lied about my age to get the job. So I was looking for a job. I didn't have any money as a kid, and you had to work, and so going to college, if you wanted to do that, you had to figure out a way to pay for it. So I took this job as a sales guy, and he was supposed to be 21 years old, and so I lied and I told him I was 21 and was only 19. And they eventually figured it out, but I was able to sell enough product that they didn't really care. So I went up. It was just supposed to be a summer job, just to make some money, and I took to it. They liked me, and by the time I was 20, I think it was 23, I was offered a partnership in the company, and eventually helped grow the business to a little over 70 million in annual sales. And I ran the whole New York division. So it was a great ride for more than 20 years.
so you were there while you were at college to help pay for that?
Yeah, so don't tell my kids, but I dropped out of college. I they know the story. So it was a summer job. I had a 2-year associate's degree. I was the first person in my family ever since anybody ever came to the United States to go to college. And so I had a 2-year degree, and I had these aspirations to be a corporate attorney. And then I realized that, oh shit, that cost a lot of money to do that. So I took this job, and I figured, all right, let me make some money for the summer. I started on June 19th, 1987. That's a long time ago. And I figured I would just make a bunch of money and save it. And again, being 19 years old and making like $1,500 a week at the time, I figured I could save a ton of money, and I didn't save one penny of it. I spent it all out in the Hamptons of Long Island. And I drank it away. I drank away my college education and my kids' college education. So I stayed. I'm like, all right, I got to stay. I won't go back to school right now. I'll go back in January, and you know how that story goes. And I just never went back, and I loved it, and I stayed. Crazy, ridiculous, dumb decision, but it was the smartest thing I ever did.
How did you feel being like 19 to 23 in that position? Did you ever feel like there were pros or cons of being so much younger than probably the people you were working with?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, because I feel like I live my life that way. There's no matter what decision you make, there's good stuff and there's bad stuff that comes from it, right? So many people focus on the negative. I try to figure out the good stuff that comes from it. So yeah, the downside was I was 19 years old, and I was trying to train other salespeople who were 40, 45, 50 years old. They don't want to listen to me, but you earn their trust by performing, right? Do a great job, bring them value, and they'll respect you. And then when I was 23, I became a partner. So now I'm interviewing people. I'm running a company at 23, and you guys know what that's like. And I had a team of at one point of about 100 people, and there was a point where at the beginning people didn't believe in me. They thought I was a joke because I was so young. And so you just overcome that, and you just perform. And the good stuff was I could make a shit ton of mistakes and just screw it all up, and I did, and I made a ton of mistakes, and then be young enough to recover, right? And not have all those risks, that house, the mortgage, the kids, that you can just take those risks at that young age. It's the best time to do it.
Yeah.
Would you say that contributed to some of your success with the company is how willing you were to put yourself in risky situations or kind of think about things a little differently than you might have if you were older?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody who, if you're not willing to take a risk, I don't care what kind of business you're in, company you're in, or job you have, if you don't take risks, you don't grow,
Right.
right? So you have to take risks and call it courage, call it stupidity, whatever. Like I love the risk. I love taking those chances. And when for me, and it's not a sob story, but for me, I grew up. I come from a broken home. My father wasn't in the picture. My mother worked 3 jobs. I walked to school uphill both ways in the snow. The whole drill. And so you didn't have a choice. I had to do better. There was no chance I was going to raise my kids in the same level that I was raised, in terms of financially and opportunity. So you got to go make it happen. When you're in that spot, what do you got to lose? Right? Just go get it. And whether that's at 23 starting a company or at 50, you got to take chances. Absolutely. Makes it
Yeah.
exciting.
So then you're 23 and you're offered this, then you're 23 and you're being offered this even more involved position at the company, growing it to 70 million. How did you how did you grow this company, and what do you think were the most important things that attributed to your success there at the company?
Yeah. So when I took over as a partner, I had to invest in the business. So I had to invest $50,000, which I didn't have at the time, but I worked for like 6 months straight and just made a shit ton of money every single day selling, and then invested that money into the business. So because of that, I had a lot at stake, right? So the way that I chose to grow the business was the one thing that I had that I knew that could never be taken away from me, which was my work ethic, right? So I wasn't the smartest guy. I wasn't the richest guy. I wasn't the most educated or the most experienced by a long shot, but I would just outwork everybody. If I had to work from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night, I would do it, and I did it frequently. And I just felt like I could make up for a lot of my mistakes and my stupidity by just hustling. So you just go out there and you work, and what comes from that is, yeah, you get a lot done, but you also gain the respect of everybody around you. They see that you're leading from the front, and you're not just sitting around barking orders. You're actually leading by example, and setting an example of how you want other people in your organization to act.
What do you think's you mentioned one of the smartest things you did was take that job, that summer job, kind of lie about your age and pursue that. What do you think, kind of on a funnier side, what do you think is one of the stupidest things you did at the company and how you recovered?
Well, we only have 30 minutes or so I don't know how much time you got for that list. But yeah, boy, the dumbest thing I've ever done. I think the dumbest thing I ever did was I took over a company one time that was in complete disarray. It was a disaster of a company, and they brought me in literally at the 11th hour. They were 60 days max from shutting their doors, and they offered me the job as the new CEO. And you'd be a fool to take that job. That's dumb. That wasn't the dumbest thing though, because that was actually a really good thing. I took over, and we were successful in turning the company around. But I put blind faith in somebody in the organization to take care of the finances while I went out and just grew the business. And I wasn't looking at the finances as much as I should have. And it caught up to us. We got past it, but I put faith in one person to do that, and I didn't supervise. I didn't oversee it, and that was a huge mistake. We got out of it, but I should have been more diligent, and quite frankly, should have probably found somebody to handle that other than the person that was. So I learned then to inspect what you expect, right?
So after that, when did you kind of make the decision to start We Rise Consulting?
So yeah, so after I owned my company for 20 some odd years, And then I went to work for the corporate world. I did that for 5 years, and that was a really great learning experience, but it just wasn't the right fit for me. And then I took over this company that I was just telling you about that was in distress. And then I sold out the business. By the way, you got a dog in the background. I'm in Schenectady. I got sirens. so, um, so I sold off the company literally, honestly, within a 24-hour period. I was able to put together an investment group and snatch the company out from an aggressive takeover. It was a really cool story, but and I felt really cool about it. Literally was a miracle. And I'm sitting on my front porch and feeling really good about myself. And then I realized, oh shit, for the first time since I am 12, I don't have a job to go to tomorrow. It was the first time in my life. So I had always wanted to be a consultant. I knew leadership coaching and business coaching was something I would be great at. I've been dying to do it, but again, never took that risk. And so I was sitting on my front porch. I had a job offer, and I could have taken that amazing job offer. Again, you'd be a fool not to take it. There was a great job offer. I'd be set for life. But I knew that if I took it, I would stay there for the next 20 years and I would never go into consulting. So I said, screw it. I'm taking the shot. Got a new house, big mortgage, 2 kids in college, a third one ready to go to college. Yeah, that's a great time to consider going into consulting. But I did it, and it was a dream. I wanted to do it, and I just said, all right, let's see if I can get somebody to pay for what rattles around in my head. And then I just, I have this thing I believe in, that every road leads to somewhere. And I say it every day, all day. My kids have heard me say it ad nauseum. Everything you do, there's a good and a bad that's going to come from it, right? It's taking you down a path, and it's up to you to choose what you get out of it. So I said, I'm going to take this job with Matt, with the company that I took over. Despite the fact that it's going out of business, I'm going to get something good from it, right? Well, something good did come from it. We sold it off, but better than that is I made a connection during that year. And that year, that person introduced me to my very first client, who happened to be a company called Beekman 1802, which is a nationally known company, a couple of television shows and best-selling books. And I just happened to, they knew the same person that I connected with, and they introduced me. I got my first client, and I said, okay, we're off to the races. So it got me started.
Awesome. We talk about one of our first episodes. We talked about that feeling when you get your very first client. You have this idea and you're this vision, and then once you kind of start tasting it, it's super exciting. So you got your first client, and how did your We Rise kind of evolve, and maybe who you worked with, what you were able to offer? Do you have any maybe success stories or horror stories of building the consulting business?
Yeah. So the first client was a full-time client. They needed a full-time consultant. So it was a good paying gig, and it was a 90-day contract. And what I did was I signed a deal. I said, I'm going to do a 90-day contract with you. It will be automatic renewal for another 90 days at a time. So we don't have to sign any more paperwork. It's just automatic renewal. That was a really smart move, because it just, unlike many consultants do a project-based thing, and they say, oh, I'm going to get you from point A to point B, and it's going to cost you X $1,000. For me, I said, running a business never stops. You never stop growing. If I'm going to be your coach and consultant, you're never going to stop learning. So we'll do 90 days. If you like it, great. If you don't, okay, no sweat. So that kept me going, and they kept automatically renewing for almost 3 years. But along the way, I made some really good connections. Again, every road leads to somewhere. So everybody that I interacted with on behalf of that client was a potential client. Like, I'm dealing with all these other businesses. So I never did, honestly, have done almost no business development outreach. I don't. I talk to people about my company. I talk about clients that I work with, and things that I'm working on behalf of the clients. They like it, and then you wind up getting more business from it. So that client led me to one of my next big clients, which was Death Wish Coffee. And I was working on a project for Beekman. I contacted Death Wish to do a collaboration. and the guy from Death Wish and I took a liking to each other, and and it just keeps growing from there.
Mhm. Yeah,
What
word of mouth. Oh, go ahead, Nice.
what's one of the most common mistakes you come across when you're working with these companies and consulting them?
Um, I think the biggest one is one of the oldest ones, which is lack of communication with their team. Poor communication. And if I bring anything to an organization, it's how to actually communicate with your staff, whether it's one-on-one or having a meeting with the leadership team, or just like communicate in a way that stuff actually gets done. I walk into some of the most successful companies in the area. You look at them from the outside and you say, wow, these guys really got their shit together. And then you go in there and they're just as dysfunctional as everybody else, right? So if we teach them how to communicate, how to actually say what you need to say, and then be willing to listen at the same time. What's the objective? Let's figure out solutions. Everything is about the solution. I don't want to get problems. Let's get to the solution. And we communicate that in the right way. And then connecting with your team. So many CEOs and entrepreneurs are disconnected because they're so busy doing everything. And when you're too busy to connect with your team, you're too freaking busy. Like there's nothing more important than connecting. And I ensure my clients will tell you, I hold them accountable. Like you better be talking to your people every day. You better be reaching 6 levels down from you and talking to the guy on the production line, and just stay in contact. Let them know you actually give a damn and hear what they have to say. You'll run a better company. That's probably the biggest one.
And do you have a team now at WeRise? I saw your job posting on social media, I think little while back.
Yeah. So I've been working with a lot of virtual, I had a virtual assistant, and then I do a lot of strategic partnerships. So I offer a service that, it's guidance, it's coaching, it's knowledge. I can't outsource what I do. It's just this stuff that rattles around in my head. So, but there's other things within the organization that I can offer, other services. So I make strategic partnerships with other professionals, and they act on behalf of my company. So that's really helped. Not only does it help bring in revenue, but it introduces me to a larger audience, and I get business from it. But yeah, so right now I'm on the hunt for a killer executive assistant, because I'm just up to my neck in too many little things, and I need somebody else that can handle. So
And
if you know anybody, send them my way.
oh yeah, anyone out there, listening to this. Well, something we read about as well was the Sweet Peak leadership hike. How does that tie into communication skills and connecting with your team? Is that kind of the idea that it works towards?
I don't know that it's necessarily just about that piece. I love hiking. I love being anything outdoors. Put me on a kayak, put me in a tent. I don't care. I love doing it. And I don't have this weird thing that I don't feel stress in my life. I'm just like, whatever happens is going to happen. And if I can control it, it'll be okay. If I can't control it, I'm not going to worry about it, right? So, but I know that when I go hiking, I'm as chill and mellow and just happy as I could possibly be. And I thought, I gotta rip entrepreneurs out of their office and get their brain to open up a little bit. So I started doing these executive hiking trips called the We Peak events, and I match up entrepreneurs. They never met each other. They don't know who. They've never spoken. I literally have them answer questions, and then I match them up based upon their needs and their personalities and their industry. And I take them for a hike up to the peak of a mountain, and it's an all-day event between hiking and then beer and burgers afterwards at a restaurant. It's really cool. It's an opportunity for like-minded entrepreneurs who are going through the same crap every day to actually be able to talk to one of their peers in a setting like that. It's been really amazing, and it's grown out of control. Like that might be something I could do, is hire some hiking guides and help me run that, because that's been amazing.
What's your favorite outdoor activity, would you say?
Favorite? It's got to be baseball. I mean, I love hiking and I love wilderness camping and all that stuff, but I 53 freaking year old guy, and I still go out and play hardball or during the summer, and I love that. That's definitely that's the winner.
How often do you do the We Peak hike? How often do you guys actually go out and do the hike?
So I do them once a month because it's a yeah, it's an undertaking. Like it's a
Yeah.
lot to prepare, and people think, oh, you just take people up for a hike. No way. Like there's a I'm interviewing every person. If you come on a hike, you're going to get interviewed by me because I got to make sure that you're the right person for one of these events. So I only bring 4 people per hike. That's the right number. So I got to do all the prep and all that stuff. So it's once a month, and I do them from April to November. November gets a little dicey, but the brave souls will come up, to the high peaks and in the Adirondacks and go on a trip. But I might be doing them more often. We'll see. And I'm going to be doing 1 or 2 times a year an annual event where it's a weekend, and I invite in guest speakers. And whether you're in the finance industry or you're in HR, you might bring value to the entrepreneurs that attend these events. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Awesome, yeah. Shields and I can get on the waiting list.
Go, let's
After
go.
after we run the, what was the 5K? What's it called? What's the name of it? The Spartan. After Ryan and I run the Spartan,
Oh,
yeah.
great. Yeah.
You got to make that happen because you
I
haven't lived
know.
until you win a Spartan race. So we get you guys to do that, and then we'll take you on a hike.
Okay, deal. So if we
Yeah.
can convince Ryan, maybe.
Mhm.
Okay. So kind of the last topic here we wanted to talk about was business trends and like where you see certain trends going. So the first one would be remote working. Do you think with COVID and the pandemic, do you think that remote working will stay kind of how it has been, or do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, remote working. I don't. There's certainly a disconnect, right? Like getting in an office with somebody, sitting next to somebody, um, collaborating in a room. There's nothing that'll ever replace that. It's really necessary, just the human connection. And when you're sitting in a room together or in a building together, and an idea pops up, like you got somebody you can run over, talk to, and there is something about that. But look, whether I mean, I've been doing a ton of remote coaching these days, which I never did, and everything I do is so personal. I literally get in the bunker with the client. I'm on site with them. It's one of the things I do that's a little different is I have to be a part of your organization. And I literally, I'm in your building. I talk to your team. I'm in your meetings. I'm at your Christmas party. I join your friggin' softball team. And, and that's a big part of, what I do. But when COVID hit, I had to pivot, right? What am I going to do? I can't do that. So I started doing more remote work. And whether you're a team of 100, a team of 1,000, or a team of 2, remote work is here to stay. And again, there's good that comes with it, and there's bad that comes with it. Let's go find the good. There's a lot of great stuff. I can talk to way more people remotely than I ever could try to coordinate everybody to get to my office and do a meeting. So I see people who struggle with the remote work, and I get it. There should be some balance there, but there are so many benefits to it. And just think about, in the e-commerce industry, right? What I'm trying to find, I do a lot of hiring for my clients, right? Like my whole thing is I develop strategy for my clients. And we always will develop this really great strategy. But if we put an A+ strategy in the hands of a B- person, you got a B- strategy, right? So we got to find great people. One of my clients wanted me to find them somebody who can run their e-commerce operations. And I was looking in our area, the Albany area, and there just weren't a lot. There weren't enough people who are really great at it. They're elsewhere. There are other places in the country. And the client was not open to a remote job. He said, you got to think outside the area. And they wouldn't do it. All they thought about was what was bad. Well, ultimately, we chose a remote person. The guy killed it. And 3 years later, who do you know that's not doing remote work? Like there's a lot of benefits to it. You got to embrace it. You have to be willing to pivot and change, no doubt.
for sure.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
I think the important thing though is like, and again, this goes back to the connection part. I have a company that I consult for. They are a $30 billion a year company with multiple locations across the country and throughout the world. They've had to they've had to remote work for many years, but not within their each division, right? So now each division is fragmented. So I work with the leaders on the team on how to make those touches, how to make, I call them pillars, right? A pillar, like you're building these pillars of connections, these pillars of positivity within the team. So if you and I are, if, let's say that you work for me and you're doing work and we get on a couple of conference calls here and there and it's all business and it's all remote and we don't ever connect, you're not going to have loyal employees, you're not going to have happy and connected employees. So the leaders got to do that. You've got to send messages to them. I tell my clients, send them a Slack, email them. I don't care if you mail something to their house, like connect with those people. It's very important to keep that connection even though it's remote.
Mhm. And similarly to building connections, how do you think, how can you build a company culture remotely, and also sort of related to that, but just build trust if you've never met someone in person? Like maybe the whole hiring process was virtual and then everything still continues to be virtual.
Yeah. So wherever possible, I do try to get my clients to do the virtual. So my process for hiring is we do a phone screen, then we do a virtual interview, then I do a personality profile. I use Wonderlic and I send out a Wonderlic test and just to get a sense of who this person is. Um, and then I like whenever possible to get a face to face, right? Just that one face to face interview, just for that very reason. But that's not always possible. So you've got to have a really good hiring process. It's the most important thing you can do, like hire the very best people. So take your time, hire real slow, be super careful that you're going to hire somebody that can thrive in a remote environment, somebody that you can trust. And you need to interview for that stuff. It's not just, it can't just be luck. You have to interview for the things. All right, you're going to be working for me remotely. Holy shit, how do I know that you're not going to burn the building down? So you got to interview for that, for that. But everything you can do remotely, whether you're having, virtual cocktail hours with your team. I know clients that do like a virtual gaming night. They get on and play video games. That's not my speed, but whatever. But they do those things to build those connections the very best you can. And yes, there will be some disconnect. If it's all virtual, that's one of the negatives. There is going to be that little bit of disconnect, but there's way more positive that comes from
For sure.
I was curious, so with kind of deciding not to go the traditional college route, your thoughts on like higher education and college in the future, like the degree of or the value of a degree and like where you think that'll go in the future.
Yeah, so I gotta tell you, when I wasn't afraid to tell anybody in my family that I was not going to college, except for my grandfather. My grandfather was like, he's the guy that helped raise me, right? He was my father figure, and he's the guy that pushed me to be a corporate attorney, and he was so proud of me when I went to college. And then I had to tell him that I was not going back, and I was shaking. I practically pissed my pants. I couldn't even I couldn't even look at him, but. Um, so when I told him, he was highly disappointed, and he said, there's nothing more important than having that education. He says, you're smart, you're talented, you're motivated. He says, but you got to have that education. And yes, he's right. And having a higher education, I still believe, is very important. I think it's important to get that degree. I think just for the fact of learning, maturing, life's experiences. Look, I think going to college, I got kids that, one out of college, two in college, and they get to grow and mature and go, like, get out of my house. You don't want to be around me anymore. My job is to raise you and keep you straight till you're 18, then go to college and take everything that you learned and go figure it out. So that's such a huge part of it. And then having the degree to some companies is really important. And obviously it depends on the industry, right? You're not going to go be a heart surgeon if you didn't if you didn't get a degree. So, but there are a lot of businesses that you can get into that you don't need the degree. No doubt about it. I think it's a case by case. I think it's an individual thing. Some people, and my one son wants to be a chiropractor. Well, he's got 7 years of college, 8 years of college. He's got to do it, right? For what I do, entrepreneurial, my degree has never helped or hurt me in any way, or my lack of degree. So I would never encourage anybody to drop out of college. But if you feel like you've got a path that doesn't need it, first of all, you better friggin' be right. You better be right. Because once you are out, man, it is hard to get back in. But there's a lot of things that you can do and be successful without that degree. Now I say that and I hope my kids don't ever listen to this.
Yeah, it was definitely something Sheila and I constantly considered, but never fully pulled the trigger. But yeah, happy to have it now. It's like I was literally saying to Sheila the other day, I don't think I'll ever use my degree in biology.
Yeah.
Maybe, but there was still plenty of good things to get out of it. And
That's the thing. I mean, there's,
yeah,
again, pluses and minuses with everything we do. There's stuff that you may not use your degree. I got a freaking associate's degree in liberal arts. What the hell am I going to do? What am I going to do with that? But I learned things during college, right? And I learned to mature. I learned to grow. I learned, and I can't believe I'm repeating this, but somebody said it to me once. I thought it was the stupidest thing ever. But I learned how to learn. And I learned that, okay, I got to do this on my own because I don't have somebody nagging me all day long. You've learned, you pull things out of every experience. And I think it's a tremendous opportunity should somebody have the wherewithal to do it.
kind of a cliche on that. What is something you would tell yourself as like at like age 20 if you could go back and tell yourself one thing, whether it be invest in Bitcoin or words of words of inspiration?
What would be the one thing I would tell myself? I got to tell you, I think when I say that, when I think about the advice I might want to give myself, it's almost like I have a little bit of regret as to part of the journey. And I have literally zero regrets, like no regrets. Every road leads to somewhere. So whatever I've done brought me to here. And I'm in the happiest place in my entire life, ever in my life. So if I changed one thing, it may change where I am and who I am today. So I know that's a shit ass answer to your question, but I don't know that I would. But on the Bitcoin thing, I would tell you, I would have listened to my son a little bit earlier when he told me about Bitcoin at $80, and I didn't know what the hell a Bitcoin was, and I didn't buy it for $300. And then I probably would have told myself to sell it 6 months before I sold it. So that's probably what I would have done.
Was that Ryan who told you about at $80?
And he's going to be able to hold that over my head for a long time. But I'm going to hold over his head that I told him to sell. I sold sooner than he did, so I'm going to hold that over his head.
Yeah, it's crazy right now that it's at what, like 50 something, 54,000.
And
Yeah.
and you know what? I've got Ethereum, I've got some Bitcoin. I just dumped some more money into it, and you know what? I'm actually going to give you a better answer. I would have told myself at the age of 19, save and invest your money, because I never did that. In my family, the way we grew up, we we didn't have any money to buy bread, much less invest in stocks, right? So there was no investment advice. Nobody was smart enough in my family to talk about investing. So I just made, we were taught, I come from an Italian immigrant family and an Irish immigrant family. So what did we do? We came to the United States and worked like savages. So that's all we did was just work, and keep working harder and making money. And you just spend it. And, my kids, I drilled it into their heads. Save money, take the money, take 10, 20% first, invest it, and go ahead and take some risks, be aggressive. diversify real estate, stocks, Bitcoin, lemonade stand, I don't care, but invest that money and then live off the other 80%.
Mhm.
What we all do is we say, I'm going to make a bunch of money, and then whatever I have at the end of the month, I'm going to save and invest. And we never have anything left. If you're living the good life, there's no money left at the end of the month. So I would have told myself to invest. I probably wouldn't be playing catch up right now in my life. So that would have been a good piece of advice.
Would you have this question's more out of curiosity and kind of selfish question, but would you have any advice for someone just getting started? I've heard a lot of different things, Roth IRAs, it's so accessible too with different things to get started with stocks and real estate, but any advice for getting into that if you don't know really much?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start by saying I'm horrendous. I have a horrible track record of investing in the stock market. If you want me to kill your competition, tell me to buy their stock and I will bury that company. Right. So that's my history investing. But it all depends on how old you are and what stage of life you're at. So at this stage of your life, you've got all the time in the world to invest and take risks and take the big gambles and go ahead and invest in Bitcoin and things like that. I think that's a really great place to be, is to invest aggressively. But then you should always have those safe harbors. You should invest in a Roth. You should invest in a SEP. You should. I mean, real estate has been the one winner for me throughout my whole life. For whatever reason, I have the ability to find a property, see the value in it, buy it for well under market, and then sell it for well over market. That's been a big win. So if you can have the aggressive things, do the crazy things, invest in a business, invest in Bitcoin and all that stuff, but then have some safe ones too, that if everything crashed down on you, you still got that safety, and a little bit of money, cash under the mattress doesn't hurt either.
Kind of out of learning by doing this podcast and improving our podcasting, what is a question that that we didn't ask today that you would have been impressed by or would have liked us to ask you?
I think it would be, no, maybe it wouldn't be. That's a tough one. I think it would be, what would be the best advice that you could give to a young entrepreneur, like a young startup entrepreneur? What's the best advice that person could be given? So you looking for me to answer the question now? Sorry, so I'm gonna interview myself. So Warren, what would be the best advice that you could give to a young entrepreneur? That's an excellent question, Warren. I would say that take every opportunity to learn. Don't think that you need to have all the answers. You don't. Nobody does. And great leaders admit when they're wrong and admit what they don't know. Terrible leaders pretend to know everything, and they're the only ones that don't recognize that nobody's fooled by that position, right? So surround yourself with the smartest people that you can find. They have to be smarter than you. They have to be more talented than you. You have to have those people. I call it my fortress. I got where I got, and I got my success despite all my shortcomings, because I put these really good people. They were better at everything whatever the job was that I needed done, I found somebody who was better at it than me. So you do that, and then they teach you. You learn from them. Even as a coach and consultant, I work with other companies, and as much as I'm teaching them, I'm learning from them. So I think that's would be sound advice for everybody. Be confident in what you don't know. Surround yourself with smart people. Nothing wrong with it.
Something, because you've mentioned it a lot, is focus on the good. There's good and bad with everything. Focus on the good. Just something that's obviously very relevant is the pandemic. And how have you trained yourself to have that mindset, or is it just natural? And that could also be the case, because that's a very important thing right now our world needs, is to really focus on the good and the optimism.
Yeah, I will say that I'm fortunate. I think I was raised by my mother, and she was always positive. So I think I was just raised with that mindset. But I have a brother who was raised by her as well, and he's got a very negative mindset, right? So there is nature versus nurture. But for me, I think I'm wired to be positive, and I was raised to be positive, and those two things really help. But it does take work, and in I remember when March hit in 2020, and I'm like, oh shit, my business is really doing great right now. And now I've never navigated my company or anybody else's company through a friggin' global pandemic. you know, I don't know what's to come, but I say it all the time that I'm going to get something good out of every experience. I have to. The other option is defeat, and that's not an option. So I figured out other ways to make my business better. And I work with these clients, and they, I just looked at in March, they got punched in the mouth and they hit the canvas. And then in like April, they started to get back up. And by June, everybody was back on their feet, and entrepreneurs come out swinging, right? Mm-hmm. So we got to find ways to not just get past the pandemic. If you own a restaurant, you're not making up that revenue that you lost for all those months that you were out of business. So forget that. Now let's think about how to make the business better from here on, and then how to make it even better. Learn something better from this thing. Take the shit that was dealt to you and make something better that makes your company even more successful outside of a pandemic. So it is a mindset. I think you have to train yourself. Some people are born with it, but all of us have to work at it. I'm very competitive. I love winning, and I'm just not going to let anything, this is the one thing I've got, is a positive mindset. You can't let somebody take that away from you. Besides, being unhappy and negative is freaking awful, isn't it? It's miserable. Yeah. I don't want to do it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much, Warren, for talking with us today.
Cool. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks, Warren. It was great to meet you.
Thanks, guys, so much for watching. We're going to be releasing episodes weekly, and we're trying to hit the bar. So we're going to peace out. Be sure to like, subscribe, all the other things, all the social medias, comment, share, retweet, copy, paste link. Isn't that the TikTok thing? Just full send it. Get it done. Get it done. Get us some likes, guys. Hope you guys enjoy.